Hello, and welcome to Dream It, Build It, Make It, the series where we talk to the people behind the best customer experiences. I'm your host, Michael Heward, Manager of Content Marketing at Iterable, and I'm very excited today to be joined by one of the most delightful people I know, VP of Marketing at Eaze, Sheena Shiravi. Sheena, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
So to kick us off, I was hoping you could tell everyone watching a little bit more about yourself and what you do at Eaze.
Absolutely. So I am the VP of Marketing at Eaze. Eaze is a cannabis marketplace delivery company based in California. I head up the, 10-person marketing team. I oversee all of our email marketing, our promo strategy, our social, our content, our influencer program, our affiliates, our advertising, on and on. And yeah, I've been with the company for coming up on 6 years, and it's been a pleasure watching it grow.
That's awesome. So a little bit of everything. And so as you're doing that, I'm sure you're seeing a lot about what goes into being a customer. So I'd like to hear about your experience as a customer and a consumer. Like, what are the features of a good customer experience that you look for? And like, if there are any brands that you think are doing a really great job with it.
Absolutely. I think simplicity, that might be an obvious answer, is key. And then I think customer support as well. Making sure your customer support is easily accessible and, helpful is really important. Not hiding the phone number, the email address, getting back to your customer with a timely manner, I think is really important. I think, let's see, brands that are doing it well. I'm just trying to think of all of the apps on my phone.
Do it. I definitely think the simplicity you're talking about is the great. I hate having to click 5 times just to see whether I'm going to be able to chat with someone or call them or email.
Exactly. This also might be a pretty obvious one, but I feel like Amazon does a fantastic job on their app. Not only surfacing, deals and things that you might want, but the search is really easy. The order history, going back, saving things is really easy. I think, I don't know. One thing I know I don't like about certain apps is, more food delivery apps, not being able to go back to my order history. You can see your order, you can see where you got it, but you can't auto order the exact same thing, which is something as a consumer I find kind of frustrating that I have to go back and refill my cart. Whereas Amazon, you can auto order the exact same thing. And of course, their customer service is fantastic. Getting the delivery Prime, is incredible. And the returns are also really easy. So I'd say from start to finish.
Yeah. No, that makes
and
sense.
Also, I think the other important thing is kind of the seamlessness between their website and their app. They're both very, very similar in their UX, UI. And I think that continuity is incredibly important.
Yeah, you like that cohesion. It just across. I agree. That's great. And so that's something I feel like has been picking up with the pandemic. There's been that kind of digital transformation that everyone's had to adapt to if they hadn't already, or just kind of expand if they had already started. So I'm curious, how have you had to adjust to these? What's changed, or what stayed the same?
Well, the pandemic for delivery companies was great. Everyone relied on delivery for cannabis specifically. Obviously, cannabis is great for anxiety. And so we definitely saw a spike in deliveries and sales right around the start of the pandemic. And things that we had to pivot, we ended up having to pivot our 420 campaign. The campaign was really focused around being happy and how cannabis helps you kind of be happy. And April was basically the first full month of shelter in place. And so that was kind of an inappropriate tone. So, within 3 weeks, we had to adjust the entire campaign, which was a lot. And then the other part of it was on the advertising front. We used to have out-of-home advertising was a big portion of our advertising budget. And since people weren't outside anymore, we had to, reallocate those funds, invest a little bit more in digital advertising and finding different partnerships. We did a partnership with Me Undies. It's a consumer brand that creates underwear. They did a weed print. And so doing these in-kind partnerships with consumer brands or brands that we knew our consumers were using during the time, of course, like pajamas, underwear, when you're at home, it was kind of a no-brainer. So looking for other opportunities like that. And then also kind of the kind of content that we were putting out, like we started putting out like more recipes or like DIY things to do at home, pairing cannabis with, different at-home activities. We did a virtual, yoga session. So different things like that to meet our consumers where they were.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something I've definitely seen out of you. You guys have a very like light and fun brand, and I think that really lends itself well to cannabis. Like, do you see more of an impact in your customer engagement from having that more personal tone and that more kind of conversational tone?
Absolutely. So actually last year we went through a whole brand refresh. We kicked it off in May and launched it in October. And it was really interesting. Kind of the reason we did it when Eaze launched cannabis, it was still, California was still in a medical state. And we firmly believe that cannabis is a medicine and a wellness tool. And so we developed the brand, the colors was very approachable, and almost it had a clinical feel, when other brands were going blacks, reds, like Rastafarian colors, we went with like, blue, white. Our website looked like any other e-commerce marketplace. So again, it's that familiarity that was really important to us. And so, we really were trying to appeal to everyone, right? So the cannabis consumer is anywhere from, a 25-year-old working professional to an 80-year-old with arthritis and everything in between. And so we wanted to really make sure that we were approachable and fighting the stigma through our brand, right? Normalizing cannabis through our brand. And then as society's kind of caught up, the stigma is being rolled back. People are rediscovering cannabis and all of its benefits, and the breadth of products available to the consumers has just exploded over the past 6 years that I've been in the industry. Last year we decided to be more authentic. I think the other big part was we started as a tech platform, so we didn't actually touch the plant. We were a software that local dispensaries would use to do your delivery. So the end consumer didn't actually know it was a local dispensary, but it was. And then last year we pivoted to actually verticalize and own the entire supply chain. Started putting out white labeling some products as well. So now we were a true cannabis company. And so to be more authentic to ourselves and to our customers, we went and looked at, let's talk to our biggest cohort, and they are, 25 to 35-year-old male, female. It's almost 50-50 at this point. And so, yeah. And then because we were born out of a tech company, we still were that. And so, internally we call ourselves the weed nerds. Quality is incredibly important to us. Compliance is incredibly important to us, making sure from start to finish, everything that we do is compliant so the customer doesn't have to worry about it. So that's kind of where the nerd part, not only do we pick our products very carefully and have the highest standards, but we were born out of tech. And so we had a lot of incredible data. We put out so many data reports. Eaze Insights is the program. And those reports really helped, again, normalize cannabis, educate policymakers, reporters, consumers about what the actual facts were, that really just dispelling the cannabis stereotypes, the cannabis user stereotypes.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's an interesting point you bring up, like about compliance and kind of that information. Do you think it's important as you're going along with customers that you're informing them of regulations, or is that something where you want to build that kind of level of trust where they don't necessarily need to come to you for that information? Like how do you kind of toe that line?
It's definitely a little bit of both. I think for the company, it's actually really frustrating sometimes where we can't tell, or when we choose not to tell our consumers why we don't do something we don't do. And again, I think we as a brand really do try to build that trust, that quality, that compliance. And so what you'll see is every once in a while we'll inject that. But if you go to our site, we have all of the content, we have all of the license numbers. We have a really great trust and safety team. When COVID hit, for instance, we listed out absolutely everything that we were doing. We had that in every email. We had that in your email receipts. Just to make sure that we were kind of signaling to the customer that, I guess that wasn't necessarily compliance, but things that we don't talk about that much is you can actually order cannabis through our app, and that's an Apple and Google policy that we can't do. In California, you can't deliver past 10 p.m. That's another, compliance issue. There's a lot of kind of smaller ones. If all of a sudden we can't deliver in a certain territory because of the local government, that's another one. Though in those cases, we do try to communicate that to the customer, really to help activate and let them know what's happening and encourage them to call their city councils. But yeah, so it's definitely a mix. But generally, in my role, the most important thing is for consumers to trust the brand. So where it makes sense, we bring it up. And it's so nuanced and there's so many rules. So it would be, I think, very overwhelming if that was constantly, and ultimately, I think the cannabis consumer just want their weed. So
that's totally fair. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine how you guys keep up, and especially like state by state, like, it seems like even county by county can get to be like complicated.
I think the other big thing is the taxes and fees. I mean, they're astronomical in the cannabis space, and there is a state tax and a local tax. And I know that that's something that we are always frustrated by, because our biggest competitor is the illegal market, and the illegal market doesn't need to pay taxes, so immediately the illegal market can be cheaper for some products. But that's another place where we really educate the consumer on the testing that goes into the legal products, the labeling, making sure that you are buying your products from a reputable brand.
Yeah, and that reminds me, because you were talking about how you can't necessarily do this through e-commerce on your app. So I'm curious what's your strategy there for mobile marketing then? Is it more of kind of that information and that content base? Is it kind of advertising? How are you using it?
Yeah, so the app actually accounts for about 20% of our signups, which is great. And then when you go to sign up, it kicks you to the website sign up page. So it moves you over to your Safari or your Chrome. So we definitely still, like, that is a really important kind of channel for us. And previously we were also doing a lot of text marketing, SMS marketing, which was really important. And again, that was a really great way to just share our voice to the consumer. Like, it was coming straight to your phone. Unfortunately, one of the largest text providers also decided to stop working with cannabis companies. So, it's a roller coaster in marketing in the cannabis space. So, and then, Google, Facebook, again, like I said, Apple, they don't allow for cannabis advertising. So, your Instagram ads, Facebook ads, Google AdWords, those are all channels that aren't available to cannabis customers. But on the digital advertising space, banner ads, inline ads, this past year, digital ad vendors have started getting more comfortable working with cannabis companies. So that's another, channel that's really grown.
Mm-hmm. And earlier you were talking about how you would work with other providers and stuff like that. So what are some of the challenges that you've faced as a marketplace in the industry?
Sure. So as a marketplace, we have, the customer is our customer, or the end cannabis consumer is our customer, but then also all of the brands that you see on the marketplace, we work with those companies. So they are also a customer of sorts. And then prior to vertically being a vertical company, the dispensary was also our customer. You know, we had a big internal discussion, you know, our values. One of our biggest values early on was customer first. And then as we grew as a marketplace, it was like, well, which customer are we putting first? You know, what's good for the end cannabis consumer might not be great for the brand or the retailer. And the retailer, you know, they employ the drivers. And so it might not be good for the driver. And so that was definitely challenging, making sure that we were hearing all of the voices and addressing all of the concerns. So there definitely are challenges in that sense for working with the brands. You know, there's so many brands on the marketplace, and you know, in the same way Amazon or any e-commerce, they kind of have their sponsored posts or products. You know, our platform wasn't built as an advertising platform at all. So there isn't a lot of opportunities for the brands to really market the brands. And I think one big challenge is them feeling like they're getting lost in the noise. So making sure that we're treating them in a very fair and equal way. And yeah, so I would say those are kind of some of the challenges of being in a marketplace.
It makes sense that seems like a tough line to kind of cross. You're like, the brand versus the customer. But you did bring up your values, and I'm curious. I wanted to touch on this because you did mention stigmatization earlier, and that's something that I'm sure is a constant struggle for you. And so your mission statement says we're on a mission to deliver good with the goods. And so how do you even begin to like change that narrative? How are you like, where do you start?
So Eaze launched, and we're standing on the shoulders of giants, like decades and decades of advocacy, and then decades of the war on drugs and disproportionate incarceration of Black and Brown communities. That Black and Brown community was 4 times more likely than a white person to get incarcerated. And so we recognize that, you know, we can't just come in as a corporate Silicon Valley company to, you know, to benefit from this industry that hurts so many people. And so we really felt it was our duty as, you know, kind of a leader in the cannabis space to make sure that we were putting our money where our mouth is and growing the community together. We wouldn't be where we are today if the cannabis community didn't work together from the advocacy and policy front. And so, you know, when we started, a lot of our social impact was kind of ad hoc. It was really important to us, like whether it was Christmas time or early on the wildfires, different international days. So we would always, like as a team, we would volunteer, we would donate, things like that. And then 3 years ago, we hired a director of social impact to really build out an entire program. And since then, we have a social equity menu group. And we've built this program for the social equity founders, right? So again, the state recognizes, you know, you have to meet some qualifications to be granted a social equity license. But a lot of those entrepreneurs might not have access to capital, nor you know how to approach that. So making sure that the deals were really beneficial to that group, and then really, you know, highlighting the fact that they're social equity brands. You know, the conscious consumerism is a massive thing. It's a growing thing. One test we actually did was not only, again, do we highlight the social equity menu group, but we wanted to really humanize these brands even more. And so last year we started doing triggered emails from the founder of the brand. So if you purchased an Oakland Extracts product, you would get a triggered thank you email from the founder of Oakland Extracts, just, you know, thanking you and telling you like where your dollars are going. And we saw massive engagement and return behavior from our consumers. So that's something we've kind of extended to, again, like tell these stories. So that was one aspect of it. And then we also work with National Expungement, it's a group, but then also, funding these clinics, our lawyers and compliance team, volunteering to help them, to help expunge and expunge records of people who were unfairly incarcerated. And then lastly, we developed our Momentum program. Our Momentum program is a business accelerator for the Black and Brown, just minority communities. We launched it, this year was the second year. So we launched it in 2019, where basically, we put out applications and we picked 10 founders, 10 winners, and they got a 10-week course, as well as a $50,000 grant, no strings attached. And the program culminated in a pitch day. So, and this is just such an incredible program. So you have to think from like start to finish. You have the person who was, unfairly incarcerated, they come out, then they want to be an entrepreneur, but they have no idea where to begin. And so the Momentum program really helps people learn. Like we spend the first kind of couple of weeks really making sure they hone in on their elevator pitch, knowing how to present themselves in business. Then we go over the compliance in the industry. We have a finance class. We have a marketing and branding class. And these classes are run by all volunteers. And then each founder is paired with Eaze employees to kind of be their mentor throughout. They meet weekly. It's just helping them. So there are hundreds of hours of volunteer. And then it's not just the Eaze, but it's our entire ecosystem. We have our investors, we have a board of advisors, we have different groups that we work with, whether they're veterans groups, compassionate care groups, like everyone chipping in, volunteering for this incredible, incredible cause. And then what's actually great is some of the founders who, there's so many different kinds of companies you could create within the cannabis space, but a lot of the founders who have a brand, most of them then end up on our social equity menu. So it's just like this beautiful journey. And I mean, these founders, we really highlight their stories because their history and what got them to those places are just, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about some of the videos I've seen. So we have Q&As with all of the founders on our blog and our social and our emails, and really just making sure we're doing our part to, we call it advancing the movement,
That's really cool. That's super cool to see. I think that triggered message story is really, really interesting. And that's something you work with those different brands to kind of set up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
awesome.
We have like a head of social equity. And so we send them like a Q&A and tell them what we want to do, ask for pictures. They coordinate with the brands and yeah. And also, I guess the other big thing, we've really been focused on kind of social impact month campaigns, right? So whether it's Black History Month, Women's History Month, AAPI month, which was this month, putting together a massive campaign. So highlighting those groups. So not only do we have a social equity group, we have a women's owned group. And right now we have an AAPI group. We had a Black owned group. And the content, the social, the engagement just outperforms so many other, more fun content that we put out. So it really just signals the conscious consumerism. And really, again, I think helps consumers understand that $1 spent through the Eaze platform is $1 that goes for good. So I guess to also add on to that, a lot of the brands we work with, quality is incredibly important, and not just quality of product, but quality of human and founders. And so a lot of the brands we work with have their own social equity programs, support their own groups. They have different causes that are really important to them. So we also really want to highlight those brands and those stories as well to understand, okay, if you buy a Besito product, you're really helping the Last Prisoner Project. There's so many incredible causes and groups, again, from like compassionate care, like veteran PTSD, to, again, any sort of social equity work. There's so many great organizations and causes out there. And the cannabis community is one of the most passionate communities, and you find some of the most passionate people. I mean, especially 6 years ago, you weren't working in the cannabis community unless you actually cared a lot.
That makes sense. It's cool to see. Like, it's just a good reminder for every brand out there. You're not alone in what you're doing. There's always going to be another brand that's trying to stand up too. And it's good to kind of embrace that vulnerability of just like we're taking a stand on what matters to us.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
all about community.
Well, that's great to hear. Well, I have one last question for you that I think kind of goes back to just kind of your thoughts, and I think I kind of have an idea based on that last response. But are there any gaps in the customer experience? Like, is there any opportunity moving forward for brands to really kind of make that impact for their customers at large?
That is a good question. Gaps in the, I mean, I think the big thing continues to be education, educating the consumer. I can't believe I haven't touched on this yet. Again, it used to just be flour, that you could buy, and you can roll it in a joint, put it in a bong, smoke it, and that was kind of it, right? And then all of a sudden you had vapes. And then not only did you have vapes, you had like 5 different forms and batteries of vapes. You had all-in-ones, you had a 510 thread, you had a PAX, you had a G pen, you had a Stizzy, whatever. And it's like, wait, if I buy a cartridge and have this other battery, like that's a horrible experience. And then you had the rise of edibles, and you had like microdosing, you had gummies, and you had different onset times. And so education has just been so key from the start, making digestible bits, like whether it's through social, doing longer, we have like a beginner's guide to cannabis that really goes through everything. So that's always an opportunity for brands to really educate their consumers on how to use their product. So it's on Eaze, like at a more general, a high level, but also on the brands. If you come out with a new form factor, or like a new ratio of THC to CBD, like you really need to help the consumer understand that. Then not only that, there's cannabinoids and there's terpenes. THC is a cannabinoid, CBD is a cannabinoid. There are hundreds of other cannabinoids that appear on the cannabis plant, and they all kind of do different things, and they all work better together. So educating the consumer on the entourage effect, educating them that it's not just CBD, it's not just THC, it's not just CBD. There's CBN, there's there's so many. And even the cannabis industry is also learning about these because it's still federally illegal. There hasn't been a lot of money put into the research, unfortunately, to actually understand all of these cannabinoids, what they each do. So if you, as a consumer, are like, I used to smoke, it made me really, really paranoid, I don't like it anymore. It's like, okay, well, let's talk to you about CBD or this strain. And then terpenes. Terpenes is another thing. Terpenes appear in your food. They each have, it's kind of what gives citrus, its citrusy flavor, lavender, it's more relaxing. So they all have different effects. And so, really, myself with all of my friends and family, if they want something, I'm like, okay, how do you want to feel? Like, what are you comfortable ingesting or smoking? And I will come back to them and be like, okay, I think that this ratio of THC to CBD is really good. Okay, I think for you, a tincture is good. This is how you do it. Make sure you go start low and go slow, in terms of dosage. So there's so much education to be done as products become more sophisticated, as the cannabis consumer becomes more sophisticated. Again, there's something for everyone. And the cannabis consumer comes they're from all walks of life.
Yeah. I think that's a great point for a variety of industries that have a slightly more nuanced product. It's more about personalizing to the context of that consumer. Like not everyone's going to react the same way to whatever the product is. So it's good about having that education out there and making sure that whoever is looking for something, they can really find what's right for them. Because
exactly,
there's nothing worse than getting something you're like, this didn't work at all for me.
And it turns a lot of people off of cannabis, and it's like, well, no, like there's so much out there that you can try. And the hard part too is that every individual body has an endocannabinoid system, which is what cannabis interacts with. Also another, thing that people should be educated on.
Yeah.
So each human is unique. So a product the same product that you and I take, I might feel a little different than you. So it's also really important to understand yourself. And unfortunately, it is a lot of trial and error. But I see the brands that are doing the best are the brands that are delivering a consistent experience every single time.
Mhm.
I take this gummy, I know exactly how I'm going to feel every single time. And I mean, that's becoming almost all brands, really, but yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to see more as the science kind of improves and you guys keep growing. Well, that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for joining me, Sheena. Is there any way that if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Sheena Shiravi.
Great, awesome. I will add that link to the bio below. Anyway, thank you so much for joining this episode.
Thank you
Thanks
for
again,
having
Sheena.
me.
Of course. If anyone out there, if you think you want to be part of Dream It, Build It, Make It, please reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you next episode. Thanks.